live from the land of the Dharawal people here, and I'm in Sydney, Australia, and so is our next guest, Bill Hope. Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us on Adobe Live.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here, Flynn.
It was great. We had we're doing these 2 streams. We just had a stream with Jeremy earlier today, and we did a stream with you yesterday as well, and on figure drawing. And I know you have it up, so we'll have a quick little recap just in case people missed that. But yeah, I had a blast. Like, it was such a really interesting kind of take on figure drawing, and I learned a lot, even though I've been doing this for 6 years. I think I still you still always manage to teach me some things I haven't seen before. So yeah, definitely need to check that out.
Lovely to hear.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Great. So we had a really good session yesterday, sort of talking about kind of the fundamentals of figure drawing and sort of my approach for sort of starting off simple with what is quite a complex subject matter. And on screen you can see some of the sort of sketches and some of the images that we were looking at yesterday. So we were kind of talking about this concept of sort of starting with a basic stick figure that the stick figure sort of represented the skeletal structure of someone, and then we were kind of building up on that and adding muscle and talking about sort of really thinking about how to draw the body as a 3-dimensional object and how we were sort of working with those forms. So if you haven't seen it, it should be up on YouTube, the previous one. But today we're talking about sort of taking, we were drawing quite sort of static form, people sort of sitting or standing yesterday. And today we're going to be talking about sort of getting those people to move, how we can get a bit of action into our drawings. So hopefully today will be a bit more, it was quite sort of information dense yesterday, but hopefully we'll have a bit of fun today trying to get some characters moving around. So the idea that I've had for today is I've kind of drawn up a 2-dimensional sort of obstacle course. I've kind of got like a parkour kind of course for a character that we're going to draw. And we're going to see if we can get a character to sort of navigate this course that we've sketched up. And throughout the process, I'll kind of talk about how we can get this character to move. Like, this is a really sort of rough mock-up of what I'm thinking of. So we might start with a character crouching up the top of this wall, jumping on down, doing some sort of cool slide down this ramp, running, leaping over this barrier here, and then tripping on the final hurdle and falling flat on their face. So we're going to get all sorts of different movement going on. And we did have a question yesterday from someone who was asking about drawing figures lying down. So we're going to address that right at the end.
Oh, yes.
But it'll be sort of a face plant rather than anything else.
Good memory. I promised that I would try to remember that, and I completely forgot. So well done. Well done, Bill.
Oh, good. So yeah, we're kind of going to be largely working with that stick figure character that we talked to. Maybe we'll have time to sort of flesh out one of them. But a lot of the tricky stuff is just working with that stick figure and getting a lot of action into how we're drawing them. And we're going to really be considering, we've kind of talked about how to piece together a human form. But we're going to be really trying to think today about, like, what does it mean to sort of practically be in a 3-dimensional space? What are the forces of gravity that are working upon you at any one time? How are we sort of holding up the body? Where's the sort of pressure points? And we're going to try and really think about the human body that we're drawing in 2 dimensions, but we're going to try and think about, like, what are the real forces that are acting on this person? And this is kind of a good way to talk about animation as well, because we've got a series of drawings here. But if we sort of sped them all up, you kind of have a little animation of someone moving along throughout this little course that I've built up. So I'll get rid of those images, and I'm going to drop off the opacity of our course so we can see what we're drawing a little bit. And we're ready to get started. So as always, if there's any questions from people about what I'm doing or just anything about drawing or working in Photoshop, please put them in the comments. And yeah, we'll see how we go.
I'll just throw out just there. Yeah, so we're live on YouTube and Behance, so we'll keep an eye on both those chats. And Sleepy, I think you're there in chat, very keen for the faceplant lesson, haha. And I think you might have been the one that asked Bill yesterday for the lying down one. So yeah, here we go. Bill is delivering on that promise. Well done.
Okay.
Remembering that.
Brilliant. Shout out to Sleepy.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things that I've kind of drawn this three-dimensional environment, and it's really good to have a framework of that. we talked about yesterday, if you're drawing someone sitting on a chair, it was always best to draw the chair first and kind of adapt the person to the object that we've already drawn. So we really want to be mindful of the environment that we're drawing our person onto. We don't want them sort of just floating out in space. We want to try and ground them in the place that we're drawing. And one big thing I'm going to consider here is we won't go into a whole discussion about perspective drawing or anything like that, but you can see that the lines of this drawing here are kind of converging. And if I draw a bunch more lines, they're sort of all going out in this direction, and they would converge on a point sort of over here in our drawing. And I just want to sort of be mindful of those lines of this drawing here. All these perspective lines are giving us information about where we are in space. So when I start to draw my character, I'm going to be kind of considering those lines from the very start. So I wanted to draw a character that's kind of perched on top of this wall here. So I'm sort of thinking about these kind of lines here, and I'm going to start off with just a line of the top of the shoulders. And by aligning that line up with the lines, the perspective lines and the rest of the drawing, I'm already giving a sense of where they're angled. They're sitting, they're standing sort of looking out from the top of this wall. So the line of their shoulders is going to line up with that line at the top of our wall here. That seems very, very basic, but just little things like that give us information about this person's physically part of that space. So I've drawn the line of the shoulders there, and then we talked about our second most important line yesterday being the line of the spine. So they're going to kind of be crouched. So I'm drawing a curved line for the back of the spine, and then I'm going to sort of draw a line for the top of the hips here, and you can see again I'm lining that up with the line at the top of the wall and the line at the top of the shoulders, so it's all kind of part of a piece there. So I was thinking our character might be doing a sort of Spider-Man-y kind of pose perched on top of this wall, so I'm just going to draw the oval about for sort of the rib cage below the shoulders there. And if we're drawing this person face on, there would kind of be sort of with their legs out in a sort of Spider-Man posed, their hands forward, and they're sort of perched and ready to leap off this wall. But we're doing it from an angle here, so I kind of have to imagine if there were knees poking out from our pelvis of our character there, where would they be in space? So I'm going to draw one circle here for a knee that's coming towards us, and I'll connect the line back down there. And then I'm going to draw another leg poking up here. I'm going to draw a circle for a knee, and the leg coming back down to the base. And one thing I'll mention here is you've got one circle here for the knee, another circle here for the knee. But if I were to draw a line through those, that's lining up with the perspective lines that we've already got in our drawing. So again, we're taking something that's a sort of organic, strange shape of a human body, but we're trying to align it as much as possible with the physical environment that it's already in.
That's cool. Yeah, it's great. Like, because obviously it made a lot of sense with the shoulders, but then I mean, it makes just as much sense with the knees, but it wasn't intuitive to me. I didn't think of that. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's just those little cues that we're giving to show us where that body's in space. I'll get rid of that bit. And we talked about yesterday as well, sort of drawing the most of the body and usually putting the head on last, because we now have the information of where the neck's going to be. And I might have our character sort of looking out onto the scene. So I'm going to draw those lines, the sort of cross on the face, and that gives us information that while this part of the body is facing down, if I were to draw a cross on the chest, that's sort of facing down, but our head is kind of looking up. So we've got that upward turned curve of the head, and they're kind of looking out on this scene they're about to jump into. So I'll put in some circles there for the elbows and the arms there. So we're just taking that simple stick figure shape and trying to match it to the scene there. Might shrink that person down a little bit. And very quickly, I'm just going to drop the opacity of that. And on a new layer, I'm going to start just sort of blocking in a little bit of the body to give us an idea of what our character is doing. So I'm putting in some of the lines of the shoulders. So you can see I'm kind of just blocking in the big forms of the body over that kind of stick figure framework that we've already built up. Not worrying about any of the detail of the character yet. I'm just kind of getting in the main lines of the form. But we're using all that information that we kind of blocked out about our character to kind of get those important bits. So again, I'm drawing another sort of significant line of the butt of the character there, but that's aligning with the top of the wall and giving us that information about where they are in space. So I'll put their knees there. This person's a lot more flexible than I am.
Me too.
But that's kind of a Spider-Man kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, it's not perfect, but that's our person crouched on top of the wall.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to have our person kind of leaping off the wall now. And it's really good to do these kind of exercises, and you kind of just need to, it's good to look at photos of people playing sports, or you can even go onto YouTube and watch parkour, like people sort of doing free running or parkour or something, and you can slow it right down and sort of see the movements that they're making. And over time, you start to get a sense of like what people look like when they're moving through space. But I'm going to draw someone leaping off the top of this wall here. And to do that, I'm going to start with their spine actually this time. And they're sort of pushing their body forward. So they might be kind of like thrusting their chest forward, and their legs are pushing off the wall. So I'm really trying to think sort of practically about what they're needing to do. So let's have one leg going down, and it's like they've just leapt off the wall there. And they're going to be throwing their other leg forward as they're sort of pushing off in a run. So let's put that in place up here. And again, we're going to put the line of the shoulders at the top there. Now, as they're kind of, I am kind of keeping in mind those lines of perspective, and the shoulder is a little bit off that, but it's kind of because they're sort of twisting their torso in this movement. But we're giving us that kind of extreme angle on the shoulder, and it really gives us a sense that we're looking up at this person as they're jumping into the air. One helpful tip, if you're drawing someone walking or running, you kind of don't think about this when you're doing it in real life, but the arm that's forward is usually opposite from the leg that's going back. And just little things like that make something look kind of natural. So if you're thinking of that, someone's walking, their arm that's towards us is forward, their leg that's towards us is back. I'm going to do a sort of an extreme version of that. So we've got this leg forward in the foreground. So I'm going to have an arm going back like this. And then they're going to be throwing out their other arm here. And it's coming around. So this is a good moment with this one because we're kind of looking up at our figure. Again, we'll do the head last, and it's sort of sitting up the top there. One thing I like to do with this is to just sort of draw the line of the jaw there, and maybe the ear there. And I'm just giving myself that little bit of information that we're looking up, and you'd see underneath the chin of this character here.
Right, yeah.
Just little things like that are cues that this has put someone way up in the air that we're looking at. So I'll start connecting up some of the lines there. I'll erase some of those parts. And there's little things here like, because this leg that's in the foreground is sort of pushing up, it's going to move their hips as well. So this ball of the top of the hip is going to be higher up than the other one there. So the line on their backside there is going to angle down a little bit.
Right.
So you're sort of really trying to think practically about what are the moves that this character's making and how are they affecting the other parts of the body.
It's good also to know when to use the vanishing point, like the perspective line that you put in, and when not to use it, right? Like the original one where he's kind of sitting down, it's going to be relatively straight. It's the perspective that's changed, but then you're talking about motion, like this other element that's coming in. So suddenly motion's been added, and they would have had to thrown themselves forward, so that rule wouldn't apply in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, if they were say the character was diving and they were doing a very neat dive directly off the top of this wall instead, because they're sort of completely sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Not asymmetrical, perpendicular.
Yeah.
Because they're jumping directly straight off the wall, then everything would line up nicely with the perspective.
Like a
but
swimmer.
because this person's kind of twisting and jumping,
Yeah.
then things are kind of going off. But it's still close, so you're still sort of referencing that perspective. But it doesn't have to be sort of perfectly lined up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our person jumping way up in the air there. That's good enough for now. And then what was our next pose that we're going to look at?
Sliding.
Right. Well, I think that let's try and do one in kind of like a free fall, falling off the wall. I've recently been doing a children's book that's coming out in August, and it has a lot of falling scenes. It's about two characters who find a big hole in the forest and they jump into the hole. And there's probably about, I'm going to say 20 to 30 pages of just people falling down a hole in this book.
Wow.
So I've done a lot of falling characters so far. With this one, again, we're kind of looking up at the character. So I'm sort of doing more of those curves. Say this is the shoulders. And that's giving us that information that we're still looking up a little bit. And I'm going to bend their spine. So their spine is still sort of pushing back. And with someone falling like this, we're kind of, as they're sort of flying through the air, they're going to be sort of anticipating landing on the ground. And as you're falling, you're trying to balance yourself out. So one of the main things you're going to do is you're going to sort of throw your arms out, which is a natural thing that you do when you're trying to sort of maintain balance falling down. So I'm going to put this person's arms straight out. And if we were looking kind of top down on this character, so say we were looking at the top of their head there, and this was their shoulders, this is the top of the body, their arms are kind of like this. So if I put some little hands there, so often I'll sort of think about what the character that I'm drawing from a different perspective. So say we're looking directly down on our character there. Now, one thing you can do in Photoshop, which is kind of interesting, is you can take, say, this top-down view of a character, and I can sort of warp the perspective of it. I can use the perspective tool to kind of warp it. And kind of angle it. And I'm sort of trying to see what happens to the angles of the arms if I was taking that top-down view and looking at where they go. So you can see I've kind of drawn it similarly here, of one arm being out here and one arm being out. Sort of thinking about what does that sort of 100-degree angle look like from this slightly angled perspective that we're looking at. And it's really worthwhile when you're drawing characters like this to sort of try and turn them or twist them in your head so you can imagine what it would look like as something turned in 3 dimensions. And it's something that takes a lot of practice to get used to, but eventually you do kind of break through, and it starts to come kind of naturally.
Right. Just a quick question. We have a question from Manny. Hi, Manny.
Hey, Manny.
Bill has a new book. What's the title? Can we ask? Are you allowed to talk about it or not?
I am allowed to talk about it. So it's called You, Me, and the Peanut Butter Beast. So it's a new book. It's the second in the series with Andy Griffiths that I've been working on. And I've just been sent the final sort of proof copy of it today. So I've got to read through that this afternoon. And yeah, so it's a book for, I guess the age range would be sort of 6 to 11, and it's a very crazy chapter book about these two characters who go to the center of the earth to find this mysterious monster called the Peanut Butter Beast, who is obsessed with peanut butter, and lots of crazy things happen. But yeah, it's fantastic. I'm really excited about it. So coming out in August.
I'm excited for it too. This is the second in this series, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Making sure I hadn't missed one. Yeah, I've read that with my daughter lots of times, who's just at the beginning of that age bracket.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Awesome.
Very exciting.
Okay, so again, thinking about what this character might be doing. So they're sort of throwing one foot down to, this will be the one that hits the ground first. And we've got another leg sort of ready to come down. And these things are sort of up in the air. And the fact that the limbs are raised up, it kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of them falling down. And if I tilt the head up as well, it's like everything's been thrown up in the air as the body drops. So it's those little sort of cues that you're giving to the viewer of what the broader motion is. If you were really sort of cartooning it, you could sort of put some big fall lines going down. And there's lots of other things you can do. Like you can put some eyeballs looking down as the person sort of anticipates the fall. You can put the hair flying up there. Say they're wearing a tie, we can have their tie going up. So you're just trying to give the viewer as many sort of small visual cues to tell you what's happening in this scene, what's the action happening. Okay, so we've got someone poised, someone leaping up in the air. Let's put some lines for that guy as well. Jumping down, and I'm going to have to move the character up a little bit. And let's pretend they've done some great twist, and now they're doing their cool slide down here. So we've got this ramp here, and our character's going to do a cool slide down. So the first thing I'm actually drawing for this one is I'm going against my previous advice, and I just know I want their head to be looking down. And I've kind of angled it to the side, and they're sort of looking, if you put an arrow from their eyes, they're looking down the ramp. And that's kind of my first thought about what their pose is going to be like. Because I want them to be sort of like a cool surfer, confident going down this.
I was thinking surfing as well when you, sort of mention it to the side. They're kind of looking down the barrel. They're kind of...
Yeah. And now I'm going to draw the line of the shoulders there. And you can see they're twisting their head quite a lot from where it would connect to their shoulders there. They're looking almost completely over their shoulder. It's a mistake I've made many, many times, and you see a lot of artists do it, is sort of losing a sense of how much twist the neck actually has. So you can almost reach 90 degrees if you twist your head as far as you can, but It's not quite right. But sometimes you see sort of faces where someone's completely to the side like this, and it does look a little bit funny. You can almost get away with it, but once you reach past that point, they're really going to be about to break their neck. So it's kind of good to keep some of those limitations of what the body can actually do in mind. Anyway, with this one, I'll put the spine in, and the spine's kind of curved around as well. It almost follows the same line as the shoulders there. And I'm going to put the line for the hips in as well. And again, we're not matching up with the perspective lines, but the legs are going to be steady on the ground here. So the line at the top of the hips kind of lines up with the angle of the ramp. So again, I'm just being aware of what information I've got in the scene around. And I'm sort of trying to work with that information to make my figure match. So I've got that sort of triangle, almost underpants shape that we talked about yesterday for the pelvis. And again, I'm going to put that oval in for the rib cage of our character. Okay, because they're a cool surfer, they're going to have their arms out again. And maybe I'll even have one arm kind of coming towards us a little bit. So I'm going to do a big hand in the foreground and say that's the circle of the elbow. You can see I'm making the forearm there much shorter than the upper arm. And that's because it's kind of coming towards us. So if I've got a big hand in the foreground, made the hand a little extra big, that short forearm, that kind of gives us the information that this is an arm sort of coming towards the screen. And this is what we call foreshortening. And foreshortening is sort of the practice of drawing things to give the sense of depth or perspective to your image, that like I'm reaching out into the screen. So you know what I mean.
That worked really well actually with your camera. That totally, like the perspective.
Oh, great.
Totally
we just need some sort of 3D setup so I can really get up there. All right, so I'm going to put the legs in here. And again, I said the line of the hips sort of aligned with that character there. So I'm going to have the legs splayed out from the top of the hip there. Again, this front knee is sort of coming directly towards us. So again, I'm going to draw a shorter line for the leg and a big circle for the knee there. And I'm going to make a smaller one that's coming out to the side. I'm going to draw a leg coming down like that. And I'm sort of doing the foot to the side as if they're sort of scraping down that ramp in a cool way. So we've got our other leg coming out. And I'm just kind of blocking in the rough shape of where those knees would be there. We talked about yesterday as well, sort of drawing similar to the cross that I'll often do on the face to show direction, doing a similar kind of cross on the chest to give me a sense of what's the direction of movement there. And you can also do it kind of on the pelvis as well. You're just trying to remind yourself as you're drawing about what direction each of the objects are facing and the things that you'll get rid of later on. But it's all helpful information. Like if I was going to work over this character and say we kept man with a tie, so he's a guy having a very adventurous trip to work, I guess.
Yeah.
So say we're drawing in this character, and say he's wearing a suit. The lines of the edge of the suit, they're going to line up with that cross that I've put there. And it's just those little bits of information that we're adding in that tell us what's the angle of the body, what direction is it facing. And the more and more that you can get in those kind of lines, that tells the viewer what's happening and gives it that sense of three-dimensionality. Cool. All right. Okay, how are we going for time? We've got another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So we've got a leap, a jump. So with a lot of these, there isn't a... so I'm going to draw someone leaping over this wall now. It's often you find yourself, if you're trying to do a new pose, I think it's really good if you can draw from memory. But there's some things, I was trying to draw someone leaping over a wall before, and I tried it all sorts of different ways, and I just couldn't get it so it looked right. It kind of made sense in that maybe I had a character and they had one arm on the wall and they were jumping over, and it seemed fine, but it just looked unnatural to me. I couldn't quite get the something that felt right. And eventually you do just need to go find some reference imagery for things like this. And I eventually found some good reference of someone jumping over a wall. Don't know if I'll be able to replicate it now, but we'll see how we go. But I'm just saying that sort of the system of drawing a stick figure directly on page, it'll get you a certain distance, but it is good to sort of touch base with the reality and see like what would this really look like.
Right. Yeah.
Every once in a while.
I mean, that's something I think you've said also about drawing animals as well. Like sort of sometimes you have to sort of remind yourself, wait, which way did the legs bend on this ungulate? Things like that. Like you kind of have to, there's the thought of what we have in our memory, but then you might actually look at it and go, oh, wow, they're much longer legs than I thought, or they're far further back, or they actually bend back a lot more than I thought that they did. Or there's an extra knee or something. There's an extra bend. Yeah.
So with this character, we were talking before about sort of what were the forces of gravity, or what were the main points of weight that were affecting our character, and how would that affect their pose. So with this one, I'm sort of drawing someone who's put their arm down and then they're vaulting themselves over this wall. So the most important line really is that line going down from the shoulder and the hand on the wall. And we want to give as much impression as we can of this being a place where they're pushing weight down. They're holding themselves up just with that one arm as they vault over this wall. So I'm kind of lining the line of my shoulder up with the arm. It's like they've really sort of stabilized themselves. So there's almost a direct line going through their shoulders and down their arm onto the top of the wall there. And then the rest of their body is kind of based on what that movement is. So again, I'm just doing a line for the spine there. I'm going to put that circle in for the rib cage. And as they're kind of pushing down on the wall here, they're kind of, their momentum is bringing their legs over the top as well. So I'm sort of, I'll put in kind of our triangle for the hips there. And I'm kind of working this out as I go. So I think it would make sense for one of their knees to be coming right forward, one leg to be here. And you can, and when you're doing this, you might need to try it a bunch of times until you get the right kind of combination. This is really one of those exercises that benefits from just constant repetition. I used to do sort of whole pages just of stick figures, trying to get sort of cool movements and cool lines. And a really good sort of reference for this is if you look up Spider-Man comic covers, because Spider-Man is known for having these really wacky poses as he flies through the air. And you can always see it's kind of like each comic artist that gets the opportunity to do a Spider-Man cover. It's like a competition that they're all in to like who can get the craziest, wackiest Spider-Man kind of pose.
Totally.
And it's like they're all doing this exercise amongst themselves in a way.
Yeah.
To get the coolest look.
It's more
so
extreme
again,
as it goes. Yeah, particularly the covers, because the cover artist is usually a separate artist to the inside of the comic.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, yes, that's sort of the extreme world of action figure drawing is Spider-Man, because you can kind of make something that's pretty much human but slightly kind of detached.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly block this in, and then I'll do another version over at the top where we can talk through it. Okay, so I'm just going to put that character on another layer, and then we'll work back over the top. I'm just going to go back to this brush. So you can see here, there's some confusing things going on with the pelvis and the leg here, and I'll try and sort of talk through it. So I knew I want to see the whole pose, and I want to know that this guy's legs are going to clear the top of this wall. So I don't want them to be behind the wall. I want you to be able to imagine that he's going to comfortably get over this wall. But to bring this leg up out from behind the wall, I kind of need it to move towards us. So I'm putting this big circle in here for the knee, and I'm kind of exaggerating that to really sell the idea that this is coming forward towards us. And then we've got the hips here. I'll draw the triangle roughly in. And the connection on the side of the pelvis would be kind of this smaller circle here. They're right next to each other. And if I were to sort of fill in that thigh section, it would join up in the pelvis. We talked about last stream about breaking the body down into sort of basic cylinders. So if this was a basic cylinder, it would kind of look a bit like this as that leg comes forward towards us. So I'm taking that curve and I'm drawing the leg connecting to the pelvis area with that curve there. And that's giving us the information that we need, that this leg's really coming forward towards us. And then if I rotated my canvas, I can pretty much draw a regular lower leg coming forward. So I've got sort of the calf muscles there. And I'm not bothering with much detail of the foot. I'm just going to have the foot as sort of a triangle coming out towards us. Now with this one, we're not seeing this from much of an angle. This other leg, so I'm going to draw that as if I'm sort of drawing it pretty much side on. So I'll do the circle there, and we're going to connect it back up there. And we're almost seeing this leg from the side as well. So I'm going to draw the foot and the leg as if we're seeing it almost side on. Now we've got something kind of complicated going on, which is good. There's sort of a twist in the body as this leg comes forward. The pelvis, if I were to draw a line down the front of it, would sort of be slightly curved away from us, but the rib cage is curved slightly in the other direction. So if I were to draw a line right down the front of the body, it would kind of have this curve to it. When you get things like that, that's something really nice to work with. It's a bit more complicated, but you get this real sense of sort of dynamism in the movement of the character there. Okay, so I'm going to draw another shoulder, and again, because I've got the chest sort of slightly turned down away from us, one of the shoulders is going to be forward and one of the shoulders is kind of going to be backward. And if I've got this line here showing me that this shoulder's behind, and then the line of this part of the shoulder here showing me that that section's in front, again, these are little bits more information that I'm adding in that are telling us what direction the body's facing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting about the shoulders. The shoulders are kind of strange. I don't know, the way that they join, they can kind of bend in pretty interesting ways.
Yeah, yeah. And it is really worthwhile we talked a bit about anatomy and figuring out how the shoulders connect to the pectoral muscles. And it is quite confusing learning about all these sort of organic shapes and how they work together. But once you've got that information, you can apply it to that sort of basic stick figure. It gives you a bit more, it makes for a clearer drawing. Now, I've made a bit of a mistake here, and this arm was a bit too short, I think. It would probably go down here, but this is the joy of digital drawing. I'll just move the whole character up a little bit once I've finished that. So I'm going to add in a hand there. And I think for this character as well, because it seems like a competent character, he's jumping over this wall very effectively. If he was maybe a bit uncertain, if I wanted him to be unsure if he was going to make it, maybe he'd be looking down at his hand or down at his legs to sort of make sure he cleared it. So these are kind of things you're thinking about. What's the character feeling, or what kind of character they are? But because I want this to be a confident character, they're going to be looking straight ahead at where they're going, because they're totally confident they're going to clear this wall.
That's really interesting, like getting into the mindset. Like if it was a cops and robbers situation and it was the robber trying to jump a fence, they might look really panicked or maybe even looking behind them while they're leaping over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it was someone being chased, then definitely I would have something like this, and they would be sort of looking over their shoulder, thinking, "Oh my gosh, am I going to make it?" kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I want this character looking really cool, they're going to be sort of looking confidently off in the other direction as they do this groovy jump.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy's a little big actually compared to everyone else, so I'm just going to take that whole guy and shrink him down a bit. But I suppose this whole sequence is kind of coming towards us, so if the characters get a little bigger as we go along, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've landed, and we've got a couple tricky ones coming up to finish this off. So let's see how we go. So
can I make a suggestion? Can I make a suggestion? Maybe even
please do.
Starting with the face plant, and the only reason is that there was the request from yesterday for having something on the ground, and just if we can fulfill a wish. that would be awesome. I'd hate to get to the end and have to rush that one and sort of wish we had more time. So I know that doesn't quite work in the sequence that we're doing, but if you're able to do that, I think that might be nice.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so if we're doing a faceplant here, the really important thing that I'm going to be looking at is again the perspective. So if I'm kind of drawing out the lines of perspective, and I've got some on the ground here as well. I'm just going to draw up a bunch of these lines just so I've got them in mind and I can reference them. Because if we want someone looking nice and flat on the ground, it's going to be helpful if we line them up with the rest of the scene, so we know what's happened. So I'm just going to drop off the opacity of those lines. We'll start working on top. So with this one, I'm going to start with a line of the shoulders, and you can see I'm matching that up with the lines of perspective that we've got. And as they've kind of splattered on the ground, I'm going to have them like their back is sort of compressed down as they kind of have been squished. So their spine connects at the top, and then I'm really trying to show that they're flat on the ground. So I'm going to push the spine down, and then the spine's going to have to come up a little bit. As it connects to the back of the pelvis. So I'll draw a line for the top of the hips as well. That's our kind of our triangle for the pelvis. And then we're going to connect the back of the spine to their head. And if you lay down on the ground, your head sort of protrudes slightly forward from your body. So if I was laying flat on the ground, my head's going to actually sort of be tilted up a little bit. So I'm going to remember things like that. How can I get this person squished as much as possible against the ground? And having the back of their head back a little bit is going to give us more information that they're really squished flat like a pancake. Now, so I'll draw their sort of legs coming out here. And again, because they're flat against the ground, their feet will have had to be turned out to squish against the ground. So we're doing everything we can to show this person is really flat down. And now, when I'm trying to draw the legs in the right place, I'm matching them up to those perspective lines again. So the knee matches up with the line, and this foot here matches up with the line as well. Doing a really rough version of this, but we'll work over the top of it. And again, I'm going to have that arm coming out, and one's really far towards us, and the other one's flat out over here. And again, we're matching the hands on that same perspective line, and the elbows on that same perspective line as well. Okay.
Just thinking of all that confidence they had leaping over that middle wall.
It was all going so well.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just kind of blocking the top of the shoulder there, the arms. Okay, that's a rough version of it. All right, let's drop the opacity and try and work on top of that. Okay, so I'm sort of putting in some of the muscles of the body here. And again, this is some information that our shoulders have been pushed back because our arms are out flat. And that's going to getting sort of a bit more into more complicated anatomy area there. But if your arms are pushed back, it's going to push the two bones at the back of your shoulders, your scapula, it's going to push them together. So we're going to end up with sort of a big kind of crease in the back there. I've got my shoulders really raised up. Maybe we'll put a sort of cartoonish face down there. And we're going to have his fingers sort of splayed out.
Love the expression.
Yeah. And then I'm sort of just blocking in the rough shapes of the rest of the body as we go along. We do have sort of I really wanted this character to be more flat on the ground. I mean, I guess they're pretty flat here. This isn't too bad. But it is one of those things where you sort of sometimes you're looking for a certain movement, but you're trying to draw a person accurately, and it's kind of much better if we could do a really cartoonish version of this. But we've got a rough idea of what our character's looking like that. So the thing I'd sort of come back to with this one is we've sort of got our character flat here, and even though it's this organic shape with arms and legs coming out, we're trying to match it up with the perspective lines, and that gives us a sense that this person is really sort of flat on the ground here. Just do a little bit of tweaking. Okay.
They're very splat.
Do we have time for one more, or we're almost,
I think so. We'll cut it right to the end. So that's like, we've got about 5 minutes, I would say. We'll do a quick wrap up at the end. We'll see if we can get this extra character in, I think.
Okay. I'm just going to add one piece of onomatopoeia, and this will always help. So they're going to say thwap. And that's a good slapping flat sound.
Yeah.
One thing I've really enjoyed working on this series with Andy Griffiths is how much I get to sort of try and make up new pieces of onomatopoeia for specific things.
Oh wow, how fun!
So we have like one scene where they are falling down a hole, and they've got a baby grand piano with them, and they smash the grand piano at the end. And I think we ended up with kerplang for that one. So it's Kerplang. So kerplang for a piano hitting the ground.
Because it's heavy, right?
It's heavy, but also the plang is like twang.
Yeah.
And if you imagine like piano chords,
or the keys,
like what the. Actually, if you want to be really disappointed, you should look up. I spent a long time YouTubing videos of pianos being dropped off buildings.
Right.
Which there are quite a few videos of pianos being dropped off buildings, surprisingly. To hear what they sound like, and they make a very disappointing crunching noise. It's really not as good as you might think.
Is it more like plywood just crumbling or something?
Yeah, it's just kind of like a random scrunch noise. So it's one of those things that it's much better in our imaginations. You just kind of have to make that one up. So I'm sort of just really quickly roughing out our character getting hooked on this one. And the only thing I'd say about this is it's because it's just happened, we've kind of got a big long line here. It's good to think about sort of like if there's some sort of overarching angle to your whole character. Because their foot's been hooked on there, I want to get a really specific juxtaposition of this big long line here, and then the little kink there as it's hooked behind this pole. And then the character's looking back, so you can tell that they've noticed that they've screwed up here, and they're hooked. They've got their arms out, sort of trying to control their movement. But they haven't had time to sort of like completely turn their head and look at it. If their head was facing the other direction, or they were looking down, it kind of doesn't make sense because they wouldn't really have time to notice that they've done that.
Right, by the time their head got down there, they could have reacted sooner. Yeah.
So it's kind of like the trajectory of their body is still going in the one direction, but they've just had time to look behind them and notice that they're about to go thwap. So it's, again, little things about that where you're really sort of thinking about what's the movement that's happening here, how would the person react, and how does that dictate the figure that we've ended up with. So let's just quickly smash through it. We've got Spider-Man ready to jump into action. He's leaping up in the air. We've got all those great low angle lines. They're falling down. He's trying to sort of control that movement. Lands it beautifully into this groovy slide down the ramp. Very confidently leaps over this wall. Looking forward, jumps up in the air. Oh no, it's all gone wrong, and thwap.
The easiest obstacle, arguably, as well. Like really tripped at the finish line, literally and figuratively.
It's one of the great ironies of life. It's just hubris.
Right.
He thought it was all going so well.
Yeah.
Got too confident, and here we are.
This is me planning my day. Amazing work as always, Bill. It's so great. I love this idea, like the characters in motion idea. I think it's really, really cool. Something we haven't really covered either before on Adobe Live, and of course, just heaps of fun and amazing. All these little things that you pop into, all the things that we can consider when we're creating our artwork that you make look very easy. But thank you as always. No worries. It's been a lot of fun. It's great for me because there's all sorts of things like this that I'm doing, but I'm not really thinking through it. And once you have to try and explain it, it's really interesting. So it's been great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. We'll see you next time. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone in chat. Dark Hours for looking after us. Manny as well. Sleepy for the question. Hope that helped you out. And we'll catch you next time on Adobe Live. Bye, everyone. Thanks, guys. See ya.